Okay, so now I'd like to show you guys how to solve a quadratic equation by completing the square. This is a little more complicated, but it can help for some problems, and so it's important that you guys know how to do it. The most important thing you need to remember is when you do this is the standard form. So I wrote that up right there, x squared plus bx plus c, and if there was a coefficient here, that would be an ax squared. And so I'm going to put this down here just so that we can see how those match up. So you can see that 14, a negative 14 is our b, and 13, a positive 13 for this equation is our c. And then we all make it out to 0. All right, first thing we need to do, step 1, or step 2 actually, is subtract the last term from each side of the equals. So that's this term right here. So I'm going to rewrite it out, and then I'm going to subtract 13 from both sides. So that I'm left with x squared minus 14x equals a negative 13. Now there's a good reason why I do that, and that is because of this equation right here. I need to add whatever product I get from this onto both sides of the equals. So I'm going to bring this over here and show you what that looks like. So that's a b, or basically half of b, squared. So b is negative 14. So that would be a negative 14 over 2 all squared. Well, negative 14 half is a negative 7. Oops, sorry. I don't have to do that anymore. A negative 7 squared. So negative 7 squared is positive 49. So then I'm going to plug that in. X squared minus 14x plus 49 to this side and also to this side. Okay. So now what that does is that makes this quadratic trinomial what we would consider a perfect square. Because if I squared this out, or excuse me, I factored this out, I know that 7 times 7 equals 49, and I can use my perfect squares resource that I gave you guys on the classroom website. And I know that 7 plus 7, or 2 negative 7s, equals a negative 14. So I can rewrite this like this. Or even to simplify it more, x minus 7 squared equals negative 13 minus or plus 49 would be a positive 36. So if I'm going to write this out down here, and my next job is to find the square root of each side. Well, if I square root this and I square root this number, well, that becomes x minus 7 because it just cuts out that square. This, because this is a quadratic formula and we have to have two answers, becomes a plus or minus 6. So now I write these out because an and or, right? So I have an x minus 7 equals a positive 6, or x minus 7 equals a negative 6. So I just solve it out, plus 7, so that would be x equals 13, or x equals positive 1, if I show that. And that's my answer. Oops, I'll rewrite this correctly. Equals 13, or 1. Okay, let me show it to you one more time. And we'll do it in this form so it'll be a little clearer. So I have to remember that x squared plus 12x plus 20, I have to make that equal to 0. And I remember that the standard formula is bx plus c, because that's extremely important, especially when we get down to step 3, okay? So first thing I need to do is subtract the last term from both sides of the equals. So x, so I'm going to just show that right here, and then I'm going to rewrite it down here, equals negative 20. Then I need to take this formula right here, and so I have my b halved squared. So that would be 12 divided by 2 squared. So 12 divided by 2 is 6 squared equals 36. So then I add that into both sides of the equal. So I'm going to rewrite that right here. And it's important that we remember to not get rid of that negative 20 because that's an integral part of this. So now we know that this quadratic trinomial, this is what we call a perfect square. So I can factor this simply because 6 times 6 is 36. 6 plus 6 is 12. So I can write this like this. And then I'm going to subtract 20 from 36, which would give me a 16. I can rewrite that. And that's when we square root both sides. Okay, so that just takes out there the square, so I can just say x plus 6, and then I could say, okay, what's the square root of 16? If I go to my perfect squares resource, I know that it is a 4, so I say plus or minus 4. So now I split up these two problems to say x plus 6 equals a positive 4, or x plus 6 equals a negative 4. I subtract 6 from both sides. That could be x equals negative 2. Minus 6 from both sides. That could be x equals a negative 10. So x equal negative 2 or negative 10.